Thank you both again for your testimony today. As I'm sure you know, under the Paperwork Reduction Act, the Office of Management and Budget must review and approve federal collections of information before they are, I guess, conducted. After reviewing the agency request, OMB may approve or disapprove that request, or they can go ahead and define conditions that need to be met for approval. OMB is required to ensure that any information collection maximizes practical utility and public benefits and protects integrity, objectivity, and impartiality of collected statistical information. Last month, I led a letter with 34 of our colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, requesting information from the Commerce Department and OIRA as to how they plan to ensure that the Paperwork Reduction Act requirements were met with respect to the addition of a question on citizenship on the 2020 census. That was last May, a year ago. We have not received a response to that letter. Let me ask first, if I could, Ms. Katzen, as you know, concerns have been raised about adding a question on citizenship due to the potential negative consequences, including a lower self-response rate, which would lead to a less accurate and more costly census. And I would just ask, could you please weigh in for us and explain OIRA's role in reviewing information collections and what OIRA should be reviewing with respect to the citizenship question and the 2020 census? Could you take a shot at that?
I'll try.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under the Paperwork Reduction Act, any question being posed to the public, to 10 or more people, has to receive in effect, a hearing by the agency, and then if they decide to go ahead with it, they will then send it to OMB, which has a second comment period for people to comment. And as you correctly stated, one of the conditions is to maximize practical utility. There's also minimize burden. It's a modified cost-benefit analysis. Are we going to get something from this paperwork requirement that will be useful and well worth whatever offsetting value there is? Now, with the decennial census for 2020, there has been a lot of publicity, and I've actually read the 3 district court cases, one of which is 267 pages. So I have some knowledge about the specifics of that particular paperwork requirement. I think the most significant aspect is that the primary purpose of the decennial census, which is embodied in the Constitution, it's the only paperwork requirement embodied in the Constitution, is for the enumeration every 10 years. That is the primary purpose. The addition of a question relating to citizenship is a question which, at least pretextually, has been justified by assisting the Justice Department in better enforcing voter rights cases. That's a secondary condition. If the secondary condition is going to have an adverse effect on the primary purpose, one would have a very hard time justifying it under the Paperwork Reduction Act, because every past Census Bureau director and vast numbers of statisticians, including the National Academy of Science, has said that this will decrease the response rate significantly for the enumeration purposes, and that the data are not needed in the decennial census because there are alternative places where this data reside in the ACS study and other kinds of things. With that, it is hard to see how the decennial census with the question would pass muster under the Paperwork Reduction Act. Now, there's all sorts of politics, policies, whatever, but I was just trying to focus on the PRA.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you've been generous with your time. I would like to ask, if I could, for the witnesses to each give us like maybe one change or amendment that you would suggest to the legislation that this hearing is designed to address. Just one change. I think, as I said earlier, I've never introduced a perfect bill or probably a perfect amendment. And as good as these two legislators are, these two senators are, there's probably room for improvement. Can you think of one thing that you would suggest that we amend as we take it to markup? Ms. Dudley?
Perhaps the 10-year window for review, it provides for one review at 10 years and then nothing thereafter. And that may be appropriate for some types of regulations, but not for others. So I think I know Sally and I disagree on this. I might like to see a continued requirement for that retrospective analysis that would continue to measure and continue to observe whether we're achieving the desired objective.
All right, thank you. Just one idea, Sally, if you would.
Susan is correct that I disagree with her suggestion. I was looking at what was supposed to go in the ANPRM, and I came across something which I question its utility, and that was in the ANPRM to list the legal authority under which a major rule may be proposed, and then the following language, including whether a rulemaking is required by statute, and if so, whether by a specific date, or whether the agency has discretion to commence a rulemaking. And I can envision circumstances where the discretion is reduced with greater incidence of death or harm or safety of some sort. And I had not really sort of focused on that particular language, but I'm not sure that if I were giving you one thing that I think I might want to change from the latest draft, which looks very good, indeed, it might be to stop that little 3, whatever it is, little 3 sooner.
Okay. All right. Thank you. For some people, have you ever heard the saying, this is about as exciting, talking about an experience in their life, they said it was about as exciting as watching wet paint dry. I suspect for some people, a hearing on this subject is just like that. I think it's a terrifically exciting hearing, and I applaud our chair and ranking member for bringing us together, and look forward to working with you to, what does it say in the Constitution, we the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, to maybe work with you to see if we can form an even more perfect bill. Thank you for your efforts.
By the way,